I get to do best group, and that is, I think, the Amazonian set. Well, I'll tell you what best horde is, and if Kevin was here, I'd have to explain to him this is horde with a D. So the best horde, I got another call to go back to South Louisiana, go back from Lafayette where I was then staying, because I got a call from a local dealer that said, you just got to see this. And these people are talking about selling it. So I didn't know what this was. So once again, I go down there, and once again, you have the Garden District, not far from where I'd been before. I go in, and for all of you being U.S. gold collectors, sitting on the table are some coins. And I couldn't figure out why, and I couldn't figure out the backstory, and I couldn't figure out how they would come together. It was 216 matte-proof United States gold coins of every denomination. And the man who had put them together was not a collector at all, nor was he a traditional hoarder. What he had done was, in 1933, Roosevelt issues, and people thought gold was going to be taken. Some of them who were smarter and had advice realized numismatic coins could be kept. He wanted to buy something that could not be challenged as numismatic, but cost virtually face. The closest thing you could be to buying the coins at face, and at that time they couldn't give away the Matte and Roman proofs, so it was the best deal. He was paying a minute premium.
$37.50 for $35 worth of coins.
He was buying them everywhere they were offered over a period of time from 1933 all the way until they started moving up a bit in the 50s. But like you'd buy 20s or like you'd buy from the mint, bullion coins, that's what he chose. And there was of course it had complete sets, but it wasn't done as anything other than whatever's for sale, we're going to buy. If you want to find them, I always wondered what happened for several months after I was there. Harry Bass looked at them. Brownlee went and looked. Brownlee later tells me, he says, can you believe that exists? No one will ever believe you. And now you can't, because both Bass and Brownlee are dead. But you can find them. If you look back in the 70s, you'll see the oddest Kreisberg coin sale you've ever seen. It's 2 sets times every year of the matte and Roman gold. 208s, 29s, 210s, that's the beginning. About a year goes by and you see about another 40 pieces of matte and Roman gold. They had to have bought it. There's no way in the world that that's a coincidence. And I'm sure they sold much privately, but that has to be where they went. How they got it and in what way, I really don't know, but that's got to be how they got it. And now the finale. I'm going to tell you what I collect and why and how it relates to you. Coins are political. Production's political. They reflect the society. And everyone in this room has heard about Theodore Roosevelt and his importance to the redesign of American coinage. Theodore Roosevelt was a president, very busy, and he loved it. His wife was the expert on art. And he had a friend. His friend was named Richard Watson Gilder. And Mr. Gilder was the editor of Century magazine. And starting in the 1870s, Century was chastising the mint for not producing a product that equaled the European mints, for not having better equipment, for not having appropriations. He was the most powerful voice in New York in the art scene, in the art community, and Century magazine was named after the place that was next door to him, the Century Club. It was a men's club that was very prominent, and among the members was one Theodore Roosevelt, young man with a great reputation, reformer in the state legislature. And Gilder's closest friend was Augustus St. Gaudens, who Gilder sponsored for membership of the Century Club. They became friends at that time, but it was Gilder who was pushing. Gilder had gone to Congress in 1888 and begun the redesign effort. And in 1890, he finally got the legislation passed for redesign, but had 25-year hesitation periods on it. So the first year you could use would be 1907. And after that, for the minor coinage, 1916. Gilder did it. Then when Theodore Roosevelt rises, becomes president, the inaugural medal's coming up, Gilder goes to Mrs. Roosevelt and says, the mint's medal is no good, we need a great artist, Augustus St. Gaudens. Because Augustus St. Gaudens had also in 1889 designed the Washington Centennial Medal. But Gilder also did a medal badge, and it was only Gilder who came up with the medal, everybody approved it, and then he stacked the committee of selection with friends of his and 2 guys that worked for him. And they picked Augustus St. Gaudens. So they make the medal, and then they made a reduced badge. The diameter of the reduced badge is 38 millimeters. If that sounds familiar to you, that's a $20 gold piece. He wanted to have the mint strike it. And he goes to the then director of the Mint, and the Mint, it wasn't the director wouldn't do it, but he says, there's so much jealousy here. I think Mr. St. Gaudens would prefer Tiffany to do this, and they can do it well. But it was to show that on a smaller reduction, a great art medal could become a coin. And the gold medal, which is extremely rare, and by the way, there's only one that's not in a museum, is, in my opinion, the closest step towards what became the $20 gold piece, what became St. Gaudens' design. And it uses George Washington, but it shows a reduction process of doing an art medal, of doing a piece with high relief and doing a piece done by the skill of the artist at the time. Now I'm through. We've covered everything, and we've covered all the way up to the highest denomination.
How about any questions for Jimmy?
You have a question or answer?
Sure.
Oh, sure. I'll just do the questions. I want to see what the hell you people know.
Know the answer.
Are you ready?
Yes, I do know Harwell. I'm sorry. Yes. Let me add one thing as a postscript. I invited Larry tonight, but I invited him for two reasons. One, I want him to see this organization. But two, his family, which I've been teasing him about, when I was 12 years old, I didn't own a rare coin. I didn't know anything was even common, but I loved them. And my dad had worked in New York at 30 Rock with an oil company during the war, and he loved going back there. And his time that he lived there, though he was from South Louisiana, he loved the theater, and we would go back in time. And Stax I had heard of. And I went in there, and I was 12 years old, and Harvey and Ben, Norman showed me everything in there, gave me the run of the place. And from the time I was 12 to about 15 years old, when we'd go up there, they would show me anything they had, and I couldn't afford to buy anything. I didn't have an obscure collection, much less one that was well known. My dad didn't collect, and I will never forget that way that they treated me and the way that they went out of their way for someone who may never, ever buy anything from them, but had a fascination and interest in it. So in 1985, when the collection was sold, that was the only place it was going to go.
Is there one coin, Jimmy, that you look back on, I would say regret selling?
Dan Ruther says the 55S3.
Yeah. With the phenomenal group of coins you had, is there one that
The reason
your heart?
No, the reason's no, and I'll tell you why. You don't really own them. You think you do, but you don't. What you really do is you're a keeper. And they go on. With these pedigrees that we announce, they don't really belong to you. You have possession of it, but it will go on, and it tells its own story, and they'll learn more and more about it and more research. The other reason I don't mind is I didn't make a mistake in selling them. Our economy had busted in the 1980s, and oil was at $20 a barrel. Now, I wasn't in the oil business, but when you're in a community so affected by it, everything goes. Later, when I was state bank commissioner, during this time, every financial institution in my parish, that's a county to the rest of you, not some, I closed every one of them. Not one survived, zero. I was developing shopping centers. We had 100% occupancy and zero rent roll, zero. It's like a mining town. The only thing I owned that had a national market so that I could pay people was the coins. So it wasn't, I think I would have a lot of regrets if I'd gone, wow, I'm selling these. I don't have any regrets about that, but here's the trade. And I wouldn't make the trade if you told me I could have them back today. Going to Washington was different for me than most of you having any view of politics. First of all, I beat both a Republican and a Democrat every time I ran because we have an open primary. So I didn't belong in anybody's system, and I had raised the money. My PAC contributions were $500. So I'd raised the money from local people. And because of Leslie, my wife, with the public relations firm that she started, I got to meet more interesting people in every aspect of life. And still am able to walk in both sides of the aisle and have so many friends because I got there before everybody hates each other. And because of those opportunities and just so many instances in which I would never have had the chance. I mean, Bill Clinton comes over and says, you want to meet this guy? He says, from Caltech, he says, this guy invented email. So I go over there and meet him. His wife was deaf and dumb. He invented email because he could communicate with her at home. His other professor said, you know, that thing probably has a use. And one of my dearest friends is a Supreme Court justice that is considered the swing vote everywhere. I can sit in the family box and listen because I'm not practicing. I'm not going to appear in court. There's no one in the world. And I had great relations. George Bush was a friend of mine before he was ever president. And his father was a friend of mine. And when I was over there, I had the run of the White House. And when Clinton was there, Mac McClarty was a friend of mine from Arkansas. And I got to run in both of those places, in and out, all the time. Clinton gave me his inaugural set. Bill Clinton gave me his inaugural set with his edge mark on it, William Jefferson Clinton, that I had made it as unique. Yeah, I'll still take the trade. It's just been, you know the best thing about all of it? I know you already go. I'm going to tell you something that is absolutely a way that I was taught and the way to look. Complicated issues don't have sides. They have facets. And what looks like a pro and con or affirmative and negative, if you look at it carefully, you'll see what it really is. It's a common understanding of a need, but a different approach to a response, to a plan. And when you look at the vantage points, that's where it really differs, because Montana is not New York City. And if you take it apart and look at the common need, and if you understand and can articulate how to put it together so you can cover Chuck Schumer and so you can cover Mike Enzi, you can make it mesh more than it clashes, and you can do something well. And if you do something good and do something well, and I never talk about me in Congress. I'll tell you one thing because it proves the point. The year that I left Congress was what they call the Republican takeover of the House in '94. I was still a Democratic member. The Republican Rules Committee divided the time 3 ways on a major bill, Republican, Democrat, and me. I had 1/3 of the time, the only time it's ever been divided that way because I knew so damn much about it. And at the committee level, I got a majority of both Republicans and Democrats at the committee level. On the floor of the House, I got a majority of Republicans and Democrats. It is the last major bill in the Congress of the United States to have a majority of both at both the committee and on the floor because it got put together. And that's what's missing now.
What did you desert? Why did you desert us?
Well, I'll tell you what my friend Gene Taylor of Mississippi said. When I changed parties, Gene Taylor said it was the most inspiring thing he ever saw because they got a standing ovation from both parties. So, but that's the experience, and that's the way that I have felt. I gained so much because the insight, when you see someone else's point of view, you understand they're not the enemy. They're seeing who elected them and the impact of something on those folks that elected them. I'm seeing who elected me. And if you look at it that way, you can understand why they feel about A, B, or C, but you can also understand that on a lot of issues, not all by any means, on a lot of issues, you can do urban and rural if you just simply think it through and separate impact. And by the way, far more than Republicans and Democrats, urban versus rural is a much bigger gap than D versus R, if you really take it apart and take a look at it.
If you like this video, we're sure you'll love these 3 videos. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. CoinWeek is the #1 source online for all things numismatic. Visit www.coinweek.com to take your hobby to the next level.